The galaxy was vast, a sprawling collection of star systems, ancient empires, and war-torn regions. Some civilizations had risen to unimaginable heights, their technology light-years ahead of humanity's current reach. Others, once mighty, had crumbled to dust, their legacy only whispered in the quietest corners of space. Yet, across all this, one planet had stood resilient in the face of endless adversity: Earth. The year was 2357, and Earth's influence had reached further than anyone could have predicted. Despite its humble beginnings as a third-rate world in a universe full of powerful civilizations, humanity had proven itself to be an unpredictable force, capable of shaping the future in ways that even the most advanced races couldn't foresee. This was the result of the actions of Earth's greatest heroes, those who had fought tooth and nail to defend not only their home planet but the entire galaxy itself. In the heart of the United Earth Republic, UR, a council of leaders had gathered in a highly secure facility beneath the surface of the Earth's moon. They were not just discussing the current status of the galaxy but preparing for a storm that was rapidly brewing on the horizon. For weeks, strange transmissions had been intercepted by Earth's most elite intelligence networks, signals from deep space, from regions where no human had ever ventured. The messages were cryptic, filled with terrifying forewarnings about the fate of the galaxy. Only one thing was clear: the greatest threat to galactic peace in centuries was approaching, and it would take more than Earth's current military might to confront it. Counselor Lyra Tanis, the youngest but sharpest member of the council, stood at the head of the room, her expression grim. She had been on the front lines of several key battles against the alien forces that had previously threatened Earth, and her instincts told her that the situation now was unlike anything they had ever faced. "We have received transmissions from the progenitors," she began, her voice cold and deliberate. "They speak of an ancient force, one that once ruled the stars before even their time, a race known as the NIH Core. They are awakening." The room fell silent. Even the hardened generals, who had seen countless battles, exchanged uneasy glances. The NIH Core were a race of beings so old that their history was largely forgotten by even the most advanced galactic scholars. Once, they were believed to have been wiped out in a cataclysmic war millennia ago, but these messages made it clear: they were returning. Tanis paced, tapping her fingers on the table, her mind racing through the information they had. The NIH Core had not simply been a military power, they were a force of nature. They were rumored to possess the ability to manipulate spacetime itself, bending the very fabric of reality to their will. This was no ordinary enemy, they were a threat to existence itself. "Commander Eric, you and your fleet are to mobilize immediately," Tanis commanded, turning to the battle-hardened man seated at the council table. "We need every advantage we can get. Prepare the Alliance forces." Eric nodded, his face set in a grim mask. He had served alongside Earth's greatest heroes, the legendary figures who had defeated threats even the Council had thought impossible. Heroes like Captain Alara Soren, the fearless leader who had led humanity stand against the Vrelk Empire, and Captain Damian Creel, the strategist who had outsmarted the Larnak Dominion at every turn. These men and women had shaped Earth's future. They were Earth's legacy, and now, it seemed their legacy would have to defend the galaxy once more. But the situation was different now. Earth had lost its greatest champions in recent years, heroes like Soren and Creel had fallen in battle, and the next generation of warriors was untested. "We'll need more than just fleets," Eric said, his voice low. "We need the greatest minds, the most skilled operatives, and," he hesitated, glancing around the table before continuing, "we need those who have walked the line between death and life." Tanis met his gaze. "The ancient heroes of Earth?" she asked quietly. Eric nodded. "We're going to need them. Not just their knowledge, but their essence. We have to call upon their legacy." The room was quiet again, as if every person present was contemplating the weight of his words. Calling upon Earth's greatest heroes was not a decision made lightly. Some of the most respected minds on Earth had worked for years on a project that could revive the consciousness of these heroes, using the remnants of their genetic material and memories. These revived champions could offer the wisdom and strength needed to face the NIH Core, if they could be revived at all. Tanis stepped forward, her expression resolute. Prepare the extraction teams. We'll gather every hero we can from the archives. We are about to call upon Earth's greatest legacy. As the council members dispersed to their stations, Commander Eric stood in the shadows of the room, lost in thought. Earth's heroes had always been larger than life, legends whose feats had inspired generations. But now, they would have to face a power that even the greatest of them might not be able to defeat. Yet, somewhere deep inside, Eric knew that humanity's greatest strength wasn't just in their heroes, it was in their resolve, their will to survive. And no matter what came next, they would fight for the galaxy. For the legacy of Earth. Deep within Earth's military archives, hidden beneath layers of encrypted codes and ancient protocols, the heroes of humanity's past were waiting. These were the men and women who had made history with their bravery, intelligence, and sheer determination. They had lived and died for their world, but now, in a time of great need, they were to be awakened. The technology was crude, imperfect, but it was all humanity had left to stand against the NIH core. The extraction teams moved with urgency. Scientists and engineers scrambled to activate the long-dormant systems that had been designed to preserve the memories, skills, and essences of Earth's greatest heroes. In a sterile, dimly lit facility deep beneath the surface of Mars, a large chamber flickered to life. Inside, encased in stasis pods, rested the bodies of long-departed warriors. Most were encased in fluid-filled chambers, their preserved forms floating motionless. Others, stored as digitized consciousness, were locked in vast data banks, waiting to be reawakened. Leading the operation was Dr. Riva Colm, one of Earth's foremost experts on neural revival. Her team worked tirelessly as the countdown ticked away on the massive screen in front of her. They had less than 30 minutes to bring the first of Earth's champions back. The pressure was overwhelming, but Dr. Colm had no time for hesitation. The NIH core were close, and they were waiting for no one. Initiate the sequence, she ordered, her voice cold and unwavering. The air in the chamber seemed to hum with anticipation as the first stasis pod was opened. Inside, the figure of Captain Alara Soren emerged. Once a symbol of humanity's resistance against the Vrelk Empire, Soren had been mortally wounded in the final battle, her body lying cold on a distant battlefield. But now, thanks to the painstaking work of Dr. Colm's team, Soren's consciousness was being resurrected. Alara's eyes flickered open, and her body twitched as the rejuvenation process completed. The fluid in her chamber drained away, and her form emerged slowly, a silhouette against the pale lighting of the lab. Her hair was a shock of silver, her face etched with the weight of countless battles fought. She had seen the destruction of entire worlds, but in that moment, she was still Earth's greatest warrior. Soren, Dr. Colm said, her voice softer than usual. Welcome back. Alara's eyes scanned the room, her mind struggling to process the reality of her return. It took only a moment for her training to kick in, her eyes sharp, calculating, as if she were assessing the situation. Where am I? She demanded, her voice still hoarse but powerful. You're on Mars, Captain, Dr. Colm replied. The NIH core are returning, and Earth needs you, again. Soren's gaze hardened, and without a word, she moved swiftly, her combat instincts taking over. She was ready. She had never truly left the fight, her legacy, her essence, had always been a part of Earth's spirit. Her return was a testament to that enduring flame. Before Dr. Colm could explain further, the next pod opened. This time, it was Captain Damian Creel, the tactician who had masterminded Earth's victories against the Larnak Dominion. Creel had been dead for years, his body shattered in a battle that had left the galaxy reeling. Yet, as the stasis chamber released him from his suspended state, he was alive again. His sharp blue eyes scanned the room with practiced calculation, his mind already working to assess the tactical situation. Creel, Dr. Colm greeted him, though her tone was far less formal than when she addressed Soren. She knew the captain was not one for pleasantries. How long? Creel asked, his voice low and direct, as though he had never left the battlefield. How long until the fight begins? Dr. Colm glanced at the timer, now counting down to 0. Soon. The NIH core. They're close, Creel interrupted. I've fought them before. I know their tactics. We'll need every advantage we can get. Soren and Creel exchanged a brief but knowing glance. Both had led humanity's greatest victories, and both knew the harsh reality of war. They understood that they were no longer just warriors, they were symbols, their very presence inspiring the troops and citizens of Earth and the galaxy. We need to move fast, Soren said, her voice firm. Gather the rest of the team. The NIH Corps won't wait for us to be ready. Dr. Cole nodded, her heart racing. We've already activated the others. They'll be ready shortly. And so it went, one by one, Earth's greatest heroes returned from the dead. Each of them had a legacy, a story of sacrifice and triumph that had shaped the course of galactic history. But now, they would face a threat that no one had ever dared to challenge, the NIH Corps. An ancient race, older than any of the current galactic empires, and far more dangerous. The team, now united, stood ready. Soren, Creel, and others, heroes whose names were spoken in hushed reverence, were alive again, and they were determined to ensure the survival of the galaxy. But as they gathered, one thought echoed in each of their minds: could even Earth's greatest heroes withstand the awakening of the NIH Corps? Would their legacy be enough to save the universe, or would it be buried with them once again? The answer would come soon, but the first battle was about to begin. And the galaxy would never be the same again. As the revived heroes assembled on Mars, Earth's military forces scrambled to prepare. The rapid mobilization was a testament to how far humanity had come since the days of first contact with the alien races. Earth's fleet, composed of the finest ships and soldiers, was now bolstered by the legendary figures who had helped shape the galaxy's course. But despite the optimism they all shared, the sense of foreboding was palpable. Captain Alara Soren stood on the command deck of the Vanguard, the flagship of Earth's fleet, staring out at the vastness of space. The cold expanse before her seemed peaceful, as though nothing in the universe could threaten the fragile peace humanity had fought so hard to maintain. Yet, she knew better than anyone that the calm was only an illusion. The NIH Corps were coming. The ancient force that had once dominated the stars was now preparing to reclaim its throne, and Earth, along with the rest of the galaxy, would be their battleground. Commander Eric entered the room, his face hardened from days of strategizing and prepping the fleet. He had fought in numerous conflicts, but this felt different. The NIH Corps were not like any enemy humanity had faced before. They were not just invaders, they were predators, beings capable of unraveling the very fabric of the universe itself. Eric had no illusions of victory being easy. Alara, Eric began, his voice low, we've received more intel. The NIH Corps are approaching faster than expected. They've activated their warp drives, they'll be in our system within hours. Soren's gaze never wavered from the view of the stars, though she was already making mental calculations. They don't waste time. Not their style, Eric agreed, taking a seat beside her. They're not here for negotiation, and they're not here to conquer. They're here for extinction. A chill ran through the room. The NIH Corps' reputation preceded them. When they had first appeared thousands of years ago, they were not content with simple conquest. Their goal was always total annihilation, the eradication of entire civilizations, leaving behind nothing but a void. We need to strike first, Soren said, her voice steady, though the weight of what she was proposing hung in the air. Hit them before they have a chance to fully establish their position. Eric shook his head. We can't make the mistake of underestimating them. They've had centuries to prepare for this moment. We don't know what kind of technology they've integrated since their last reign. The tension between them was thick. The history of the NIH Corps was largely myth, with few surviving records of their last invasion. What was known was that they had left a trail of destruction across the galaxy, wiping out empires and leaving systems abandoned, their once advanced technology rendered unusable. There were rumors that the NIH Corps could bend space itself, tearing apart fleets as if they were paper. Humanity had no idea how far that power had grown. Captain, said Creel, stepping into the room. Our forces are ready to move on your orders. Soren turned toward him. We'll wait until we have confirmation of their exact location. Until then, we prepare for a counterstrike. We need to show them that Earth is not the easy prey they may think it is. Creel gave a grim smile, a nod of agreement. Understood. I'll begin organizing the fleet for tactical positioning. We're going to need every advantage we can get. Soren's thoughts were already on their next move. She knew that Earth's military strength, combined with the legendary warriors now at her side, would give them a fighting chance, but only just. They had to anticipate the NIH Corps' strategy before they could react. As Creel left to coordinate the fleet's operations, Dr. Colne entered, her face tense with concern. Captain Soren, we've been monitoring the NIH Corps' movements. They've entered the outer edges of our system. Soren turned to face her. What do we know about their fleet? Dr. Colne's fingers danced across the console, bringing up a holographic map of the system. Their ships are unlike anything we've ever encountered. They appear to be using a form of organic technology, living ships, capable of regenerating themselves at an alarming rate. If we don't take them out quickly, they'll adapt faster than we can counter. Living ships? Eric echoed, a look of disbelief crossing his face. What kind of madness is this? Dr. Colne nodded gravely. The NIH Corps were never just a technological force. They've always had access to bioengineering that far surpasses anything humanity has ever achieved. These ships are part of that, extensions of their very biology. They will repair themselves faster than our weapons can destroy them. A long silence followed. The room was filled with the weight of the revelation. The NIH Corps had always been an enigmatic force, but this? This was something else entirely. They were no longer just an enemy, they were an existential threat. Soren broke the silence first, her voice determined. If we can't outgun them, we'll outsmart them. Our best hope is to strike at their core, disrupt their command structures, and keep them from fully organizing. Eric nodded. We'll need our best teams for this. Elite forces, those who can go in deep and fast. Soren's thoughts turned to the heroes now resurrected, each of them with unique talents and strengths that could be the difference in this fight. They would be the spearhead in their assault against the NIH Corps. Get the heroes ready, Soren ordered. We move out in 1 hour. As the team dispersed to prepare, Earth's heroes knew that they were about to enter the greatest battle of their lives. The NIH Corps would not be easy to defeat, but they had one thing that the invaders did not: humanity's unyielding will to survive. And as the dark ships of the NIH Corps loomed ever closer, Captain Alara Soren and her team steeled themselves. The storm of darkness was coming, but Earth's greatest champions were ready to face it head-on. The tension was thick in the command center of the Vanguard, the flagship of Earth's fleet. Captain Alara Soren stood at the front, her hands clasped behind her back, eyes narrowed as she observed the live feed of the NIH Corps fleet rapidly approaching Earth's system. Her mind raced with strategies, anticipating every possible move from the alien invaders. Beside her, Commander Eric watched, his face a mask of determination. The time for planning had ended. It was now a race against the clock to stop the NIH Corps from fully engaging their forces. They're deploying some kind of shockwave field, Dr. Colne reported, her voice laced with worry. It's disrupting our long-range communications, and our fleets are having difficulty locking on to targets. Soren's jaw tightened. The NIH Corps' ability to disrupt their technology had always been a known factor, but to see it in action was unsettling. The enemy wasn't just a physical threat, they were an adaptive, ever-changing entity that could manipulate reality itself. The shockwave was only the beginning. Captain, Creel's voice crackled over the comms, cutting through her thoughts. We've finished positioning our forces. We're ready to engage on your command. Soren took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. Deploy our strike forces. All ships are to engage at maximum speed. Eric, take the fleet and focus on their flanks. I want to disrupt their formation before they can organize. Creel, you and I will lead the strike team, we'll take out their command vessel. Understood, Creel responded, his voice devoid of any hesitation. He was a tactician, and in moments like this, his calm was infectious. "We'll hit them hard and fast." The tension in the room shifted, replaced with a sense of cold determination. In the distance, the first NIH Corps ships broke through the outer edges of the solar system, their massive forms silhouetted against the stars like dark, ominous shadows. They were unlike anything humanity had faced before, bioorganic vessels, capable of shifting shape and rapidly regenerating. The very sight of them was enough to make the bravest of soldiers doubt. But Earth's greatest heroes had seen worse. And they would not back down. As the fleet moved into formation, Soren's eyes scanned the battlefield ahead. Their tactics had to be sharp. The NIH Corps' biological ships were formidable, but they weren't invincible. The key was to hit their weak points, areas where their regenerative capabilities were less effective. It was a gamble, but one that could turn the tide in their favor. "Prepare for impact." Eric's voice boomed over the comms, a surge of adrenaline rushing through the fleet. "All ships, fire at will." The first salvo of energy beams and missile strikes erupted from Earth's ships, slicing through the blackness of space. The NIH Corps ships retaliated almost instantly, their shockwave fields pulsing with energy that disoriented the fleet's targeting systems. But the Earth fleet's experienced pilots adapted quickly, making manual adjustments and continuing their assault. Soren's strike team, led by Creel and herself, moved in quickly, breaking through the chaos of the fleet-wide skirmish. They had one mission: to find the heart of the NIH Corps forces, their command vessel, and eliminate it. As they neared the center of the NIH Corps formation, the darkness seemed to close in around them. The enemy ships were everywhere, and their regenerative abilities made each strike feel like it was barely scratching the surface. "We need to get closer," Creel shouted over the comms, his voice steady despite the growing danger. "The command ship is at the core. We can't take it out from this distance." Soren nodded, her mind calculating their next move. They couldn't afford to lose this momentum. The longer they fought, the stronger the NIH Corps became. Their ships healed too quickly, their forces too numerous. They had to end it now. "Full speed ahead," she ordered. "Brace for impact." The Vanguard surged forward, its powerful engines pushing it through the chaos. The NIH Corps ships seemed to open up in front of them, creating a path that led directly to the heart of their fleet. Soren's mind was focused entirely on the mission ahead. Their weapons were powerful, but they would not defeat the NIH Corps without striking at their core. And that core was their command ship, a massive, living vessel capable of bending space and time itself. The Vanguard's guns fired relentlessly, piercing through the darkness as they drew closer to their target. The NIH Corps seemed to realize what was happening, and a defensive barrier enveloped the command ship, glowing with an eerie, unnatural light. The strike team was almost there. "All units, target that shield," Creel barked. "We need to crack it wide open." Soren's heart pounded as she activated the Vanguard's most powerful weapon, a massive energy cannon designed to pierce through the toughest shields. The cannon fired, its blast shaking the ship and reverberating across the battlefield. The blast hit the shield, but it didn't break it. Instead, the shield rippled with energy, absorbing the strike. "Damn it," Soren cursed under her breath. "They've adapted. They're using a form of energy absorption." Creel's voice cut through her thoughts. "No choice. We'll have to board it. Get in close. We have one shot." Soren's eyes met Creel's over the comms. They both understood what had to be done. They would need to board the command vessel, infiltrate its core, and shut it down from the inside. It was a suicide mission, but they had no other choice. If they failed, the entire galaxy would fall under the NIH Corps' control. The Vanguard continued its approach, weaving through a cloud of enemy ships, narrowly avoiding fire as Soren and Creel's team prepared for the final assault. They were close, so close. The black mass of the NIH Corps command ship loomed before them, its surface rippling with a strange, organic energy. It was now or never. Let's finish this, Soren said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. As their ships drew alongside the command vessel, the strike team prepared to board, knowing that every second they spent in space brought them closer to either victory, or the end of everything. The battle for the galaxy was far from over, but one thing was certain: Earth's greatest heroes would not go quietly into the dark. They would fight until the last breath. The Vanguard shuddered as it pulled up alongside the massive NIH-Corps command vessel, its dark, organic surface glowing with a sickly, pulsing light. The gravity wells of the NIH-Corps ship distorted the space around it, causing ripples in the fabric of reality itself. The strike team, led by Captain Alara Soren and Captain Damian Creel, made their final preparations. The fate of the galaxy now rested in their hands, and failure was not an option. "We're in position," Soren said, her voice steady as the command ship loomed ahead, monstrous and alive. "This is it. Once we board, there's no turning back." Creel nodded, his expression as cold as ever. He glanced over at the team, a group of Earth's finest warriors, hand-picked for this mission. Their faces were a mix of determination and grim understanding. They were about to face something beyond their comprehension. The NIH-Corps were not just an enemy, they were an existential threat. The kind of threat that sought to wipe entire species out of existence, leaving only the void in its wake. Soren activated her helmet's comms, her voice sharp and commanding. "All units, prepare for boarding. We hit hard and fast. Focus on disabling their core systems. Don't engage unless you have to. We're not here for a fight, we're here to end it." A series of affirmations came through the comms, and the team moved into position. The docking bay doors of the Vanguard opened, and they launched into the void, propelled by their magnetic boots and propulsion packs. The NIH-Corps ship loomed larger, its jagged, bioorganic shape defying any conventional understanding of design. The hull seemed to pulse with an unnatural rhythm, as if it were alive. And in a way, it was. The strike team flew toward the dark heart of the beast, where the command center was located. As they approached, the eerie glow from the ship's surface illuminated their suits, casting strange shadows across their helmets. Each soldier remained focused, but even the most battle-hardened of them couldn't deny the foreboding sense of terror creeping in. The NIH-Corps had never been fully understood, until now. "This ship, it's alive," one of the soldiers whispered, awe and fear in their voice. "It's not just alive," Creel answered, his tone grim. "It's a weapon, a living weapon." The team landed on the hull with practiced precision, magnetic boots locking them into place. They quickly set to work cutting through the outer layers of the ship's defenses. Their tools hummed with energy as they sliced through the thick organic plating, revealing the dark recesses of the NIH-Corps vessel's inner workings. It was unlike anything they had ever encountered, biological technology that seemed to grow and evolve in real time. Soren led the charge, moving with the speed and grace that had made her a legend. She and Creel took point, the rest of the team following in formation. The air around them seemed to vibrate with unnatural energy, and the ship's interior began to shift as if responding to their presence. It wasn't long before they encountered the first signs of resistance. Swarms of the NIH-Corps bio-drones, nightmarish, insectoid creatures, emerged from the walls of the ship. Their chitinous exoskeletons glowed with an eerie, violet hue as they scuttled toward the team, hissing with an otherworldly hunger. But Earth's greatest heroes had seen worse. Without a moment's hesitation, they opened fire. The sound of weapons discharging filled the air as energy blasts sliced through the swarming creatures. The NIH-Corps drones were relentless, but they were no match for the precision and coordination of Earth's elite soldiers. Soren moved like a force of nature, her rifle cutting through the hordes with surgical precision. Creel was at her side, his mind already analyzing their movements, directing the team with sharp orders that left no room for error. "Keep moving," Creel barked. "Don't let them surround us." The team pressed forward, the tunnel they were moving through expanding into a massive chamber. The walls were lined with pulsing veins of bioluminescence, casting a grotesque, sickly light over the team as they continued deeper into the ship. The chamber was vast, its ceiling stretching out of sight, and at its center stood the heart of the NIH core vessel, a massive, pulsating core of dark energy. It throbbed rhythmically, like the heartbeat of some ancient, malevolent creature. Soren's eyes locked onto the core, her mission clear. This was what they had come for, the source of the NIH core's power. "This is it," she said, her voice low, but filled with conviction. "We destroy this, we destroy them." Creel nodded, his tactical mind already working. "We'll need to plant the charge inside. The energy field around it is too strong for a direct hit. We'll have to breach the core itself." As they moved closer to the core, the temperature in the chamber rose, and the air became thick with tension. The walls of the room seemed to pulse and shift, as if the ship were aware of their intrusion. And then, a deep, rumbling sound filled the space, as though the entire vessel was awakening to repel them. Suddenly, the chamber came alive. The walls cracked open, and more NIH core drones poured in from every direction, moving with terrifying speed. The strike team immediately went on the defensive, firing their weapons in perfect synchrony, but it was clear that the drones were endless. More appeared with every passing second, swarming the team like an unstoppable tide. "We're running out of time," Creel called, his voice calm but urgent. "We need to set the charges now, or we'll be overrun." Soren motioned to her team. "Cover the charge set. I'll take out the control node." The team spread out, their guns blazing as they fought to clear a path for Creel to place the explosives. Soren sprinted toward the heart of the chamber, her mind laser-focused on the task ahead. She could feel the NIH core's presence growing stronger, their power surging around her. Every instinct told her she was close, so close to ending this nightmare. But the closer she got to the core, the more she could sense the presence of something darker. The core of the ship was no longer just a power source. It was something alive, something sentient. And it was angry. Soren barely managed to place the final detonator before the NIH core's retaliatory strike sent her crashing to the ground. The force of the impact rattled her helmet, and for a moment, the world spun out of control. But she could feel the tremors of victory in the air. The charge was set. "Now!" Creel shouted, and with that, the chamber erupted in a blinding flash of light. The NIH core's heart would no longer beat. The explosion tore through the heart of the NIH core vessel with a deafening roar, sending shockwaves that rattled the very fabric of the ship itself. For a brief moment, time seemed to stand still as the blinding light enveloped the chamber. The strike team, battered but alive, were thrown to the ground by the force of the blast, their suits absorbing most of the impact. But they knew, as the sound of collapsing metal and screeching alien biology filled the air, that the battle was far from over. Captain Alara Soren slowly regained her footing, her helmet's visor cracked from the blast, but her resolve unshaken. She could feel the vibrations of the ship's collapse reverberating beneath her boots. The heart of the NIH core, the core of their command vessel, was destroyed. But the NIH core were a living force, and they would not die so easily. Creel was already on his feet, his face grim as he assessed their situation. "The core's gone," he said, his voice low and tense. "But this ship's not dead yet. We've only crippled it. We need to get out, now." Soren nodded, her mind running through the possibilities. Their mission had succeeded, the NIH core had lost their command center, their focal point of power. But the ship itself, a living, breathing entity, was still intact. And the moment they had destroyed the core, the NIH core forces began to reorient themselves. More drones were flooding the chamber, more walls were collapsing in on them. The vessel was fighting back, adapting as it always did. The team regrouped, their weapons at the ready as the noise of the ship's disintegration grew louder. The corridors, once pulsing with the dark energy of the NIH core, now felt cold and lifeless. The team moved with precision, their every step calculated to avoid being overwhelmed by the hordes of drones and the ship's defensive mechanisms. "We don't have much time before the ship's collapse is complete," Soren said, her voice firm. "We need to find the evacuation point and get back to the vanguard." The team pushed forward, battling through wave after wave of enemies. Each skirmish was a brutal reminder of the price of war, but the strike team had one advantage that the NIH Corps could never replicate: unity. They fought like a single organism, their movements synchronized, their purpose clear. As they made their way toward the exit, Soren's thoughts lingered on the cost of their success. The battle had been won, but at what price? The NIH Corps were still out there, scattered across the galaxy, and the destruction of their command ship would not end their hunger for power. This victory had only bought them time to regroup, to adapt, and to prepare for the next stage of the war. The final stretch to the evacuation point was chaos. The NIH Corps ship was now in full-scale self-destruction, the walls buckling and shifting as the Corps' death throes sent violent tremors through the ship. The team fought their way through the corridors, now flooded with debris and rupturing walls, their weapons flashing in the dim light. As they reached the docking bay, the NIH Corps ship's outer hull began to tear apart, massive pieces of the vessel breaking away as if the ship itself were shedding its flesh. Soren could hear the distant hum of the Vanguard's engines, calling them home, offering a brief respite from the hell they had just endured. The strike team was one of the last to board the ship, the final few seconds filled with a frantic sprint to the airlock. As the bay doors sealed behind them, the Vanguard's engines roared to life, pushing them away from the dying NIH Corps vessel. The team stood at the windows, watching as the black mass of the ship continued to disintegrate in the distance. The NIH Corps, once the most terrifying force in the galaxy, had been dealt a crushing blow. But Soren knew better than to celebrate just yet. There was still too much left to do. "We've won this battle," she said, her voice steady but filled with an undeniable weight. "But the war is far from over. We've only scratched the surface of what the NIH Corps are capable of." Creel stood beside her, his arms crossed as he looked out at the remains of the NIH Corps vessel. "They'll rebuild. They always do. But now they know they can bleed. And that's something they won't forget." Soren nodded, but her mind was already on the future. "Our next move is crucial. The galaxy won't wait for us to regroup. We need to make sure this victory means something." She turned to the rest of the team, all of them battered, exhausted, and yet standing tall. "We've faced the darkness. We've seen the end of an era. But the NIH Corps are still out there. We will track them down, one by one. And we will end this." With that, the team made their way to the command center, where Eric was already waiting. He had watched the battle unfold from the Vanguard, coordinating with the fleet to ensure the NIH Corps forces didn't regain their foothold in the system. The fleet had sustained heavy losses, but the victory was undeniable. "We're not done yet," Eric said as Soren entered. "They won't give up this easily. We need to prepare for the next phase." Soren glanced at the star chart on the command center screen. The NIH Corps' forces had been scattered, but they were far from defeated. There were still pockets of resistance scattered throughout the galaxy, remnants of their fleet lying in wait. And more were sure to come. But now, they had the upper hand. They had struck a blow against the heart of the NIH Corps' power. "We'll track them down," Soren said, her voice filled with unshakable resolve. "One system at a time. The galaxy may be a war zone, but humanity's greatest heroes will not be silenced." And as the Vanguard sailed through the stars, the survivors of the NIH Corps invasion knew this: the galaxy had seen the might of humanity. And it would never forget. The Vanguard drifted through the cold emptiness of space, a gleaming beacon of defiance in the wake of humanity's greatest victory. But Captain Alara Soren knew that the cost of this victory had been immense. The galaxy had been shaken to its core, and the scar of the NIH Corps invasion would take time to heal. Still, the battle was over, but the war was far from finished. Soren stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead. Beside her, Creel and Eric studied the galaxy map, their focus unwavering as they planned their next moves. The remnants of the NIH Corps fleet had been scattered to the far corners of space, but they knew that even in defeat, the enemy was dangerous. And it would take everything they had to ensure they could never rise again. "The fleet's in rough shape," Eric said, glancing at the screen. "We've lost a third of our ships, and the rest are severely damaged. But we're still in the fight. We'll rebuild, Creel added, his tone pragmatic. We've taken a hard hit, but we've got the knowledge. The NIH Corps don't know what's coming for them. Soren didn't respond immediately. Instead, she allowed the weight of the moment to settle in. Victory was hollow when you were forced to leave so much behind. The fleet had lost countless men and women. Families would mourn. Entire colonies were left in the wake of the destruction. But there was something else to hold on to, the knowledge that humanity had faced its darkest hour and emerged victorious. Rebuilding starts now, Soren said, her voice filled with purpose. We've learned their weaknesses, and we'll use that. Every corner of the galaxy will hear our message, the NIH Corps are not invincible. And we will finish what we started. Creel nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. He was one of the few who knew just how deeply the fight had affected Soren. It wasn't just about the war, it was about ensuring that future generations wouldn't have to face the same terror. Humanity's legacy was now bound to this fight. The galaxy needed a symbol of hope, and the Vanguard would be it. Soren turned to her crew. I want every fleet captain on the comms. We're organizing a unified front. And this time, we strike together. The NIH Corps have no idea what they've unleashed. We will follow them to the farthest reaches of the galaxy if we have to. But they won't escape justice. As she spoke, her mind flashed back to the earlier days of the invasion, the terror in her people's eyes, the crushing weight of uncertainty, and the looming shadow of destruction. But now, that shadow was receding. Humanity had proven something monumental. They were capable of fighting back. And they would not stop until the NIH Corps were nothing more than a distant memory. The crew dispersed to their stations, the hum of the Vanguard's engine steady as the ship continued its journey. The mission was clear, they would follow the remnants of the NIH Corps fleet across the galaxy, striking at the heart of their remaining strongholds. There was no room for hesitation. The time for vengeance had passed. Now, it was about ensuring the survival of all sentient life in the galaxy. As the Vanguard entered the deeper sectors of space, they encountered other human factions, rebels, scientists, and survivors, who had begun to regroup in the wake of the NIH Corps' retreat. The remnants of Earth's fleet, though battered, had ignited a spark of rebellion across the stars. Communities that had once lived in fear were beginning to take up arms, to rebuild their civilizations, and to fight for their future. And so, the galaxy began to change. It was no longer a place ruled by fear. The fire that the NIH Corps had sparked in the hearts of countless species had ignited a new era, an era of resistance, resilience, and unity. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Soren and her crew traveled from system to system, dismantling the remnants of the NIH Corps forces one battle at a time. But with each victory, the stakes grew higher. The NIH Corps were adapting, learning, and evolving in ways humanity had never anticipated. And yet, with each victory, Earth's heroes proved that they were capable of more than anyone had ever imagined. The galaxy had witnessed the strength of humanity's spirit, their willingness to rise from the ashes, to rebuild and fight again, no matter the odds. As Soren sat in her private quarters, watching the stars pass by in the distance, she reflected on what they had accomplished. The war had cost them dearly, but it had also given them something precious, a chance for the galaxy to rebuild, to recover, and to thrive once more. The Vanguard was no longer just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's unwavering will to survive. It carried the stories of countless heroes who had fallen, who had sacrificed everything for the future of the galaxy. And with each passing day, the crew of the Vanguard honored their legacy by continuing the fight, ensuring that the darkness would never again find a foothold. In the quiet of space, as the Vanguard sailed ever forward, Soren knew one thing for certain: humanity had earned its place among the stars. And the future was bright. They had become the beacon of hope that the galaxy so desperately needed. And this was just the beginning. The galaxy would never forget Earth's greatest heroes.